This is the Jets Draft Report, presented by Nicolock Paving Stones. Tackle or tight end, what are the Jets going to do with the 7th overall pick? You know these two guys here, Frankie V and Brian Costello of the Gangs All Here podcast, official Jets podcast for the New York Post. Kaz, I'll start with you. Tackle or tight end at 7?
Yeah, I think it's a tough one, Brandon. It's a tough conversation of do you get a playmaker like Tyler Warren for Justin Fields, or do you get him a right tackle, whether that's Will Campbell or Amon Membu there at 7 to protect him? To me, I've kind of debated this back and forth, and I see both sides of it, but I would go tackle just because I look at this Jets offense right now on paper, and I think the strength of this team is going to be its running game with Breece Hall and the other running backs that they have, and then Justin Fields and his running ability. So I think you add a tackle, solidify that offensive line. You got four pretty good offensive linemen there already. Get the fifth one, get the right tackle solidified, and run the ball like crazy, and just try to make that your identity in 2025. And we'll see what happens next year. But to me, that's why I would go tackle.
Oh, not me, the former wide receiver, agreeing with you that they need to run the ball a lot better. Frankie, before I go to you, the Jets running backs didn't, not one Jet running back had a 100-yard rushing game last season. And then if you go tackle, you're also able to protect Justin Fields. Tackle or tight end, Frankie?
I mean, listen, I agree to an extent with what Kaz said. I think if you're looking at it in a 1 to 2 year window with Justin Fields as your quarterback, right tackle makes the most sense, or tackle. I'm looking long term. The New York Jets have not had a tight end make the Pro Bowl since the year I was born, believe it or not, 1988, Mickey Schuler. This team needs to figure out how to put a tight end in an offense that is able to help out with the run game and help out with the pass game. And we haven't had one. If you go down our history and take recent history, our best tight end, what, was Dustin Keller in the last 15, 20 years? We need to do better. A tight end opens things up for everybody on offense. It will make life easier for Tanner Engstrand. If you look at the best teams in football, the best offenses, the Ravens, the 49ers, the Chiefs, the Lions, they all have premier tight ends. Now, I understand the argument that you don't need to take a tight end in the top 10 to get a tight end of that caliber, of an elite or very good caliber, but this draft is different. After the top 4, 5, 6 picks, it's really fair game in terms of who's there at 7, and that person at 7 could end up being justified at 25 also. This draft after the top 5 is really it's baseline. Everyone's really at a similar level. The Jets need a tight end. We've never had one. Mickey Schuler is the best tight end in our history. Let's change that. Bring in Tyler Warren. Let's get a tough football player in here that can help out in the pass game, obviously, but also in the run game.
Frankie went full throwback Thursday on us right there, Kaz. If we were going to go back and look at last year's draft class when the Jets picked Olu Fashanu instead and passed up on Brock Bowers, you saw what Brock Bowers was able to do and the numbers that he was able to put up. Do you feel like there's some sort of buyer's remorse in terms of passing up on
No,
Bowers?
I don't think so, Brandon, because Olu Fashanu showed that he could be a left tackle last year, and I think they're excited about his future. And in terms of the argument of this is just for 1 or 2 years, no, I think Membu or Campbell could be a right tackle for a long time and solidify that offensive line and give you bookend tackles with Fashanu. Frankie kind of just hit on it, where tight ends in the first round, Bowers is kind of an exception to the rule. Usually these guys that get drafted high at tight end don't pan out well, but the tackles, you almost always have to take a tackle in the first round. There's very few really strong tackles that get drafted later in the draft. It's a position that gets gobbled up in the first round. And Frankie kind of mentioned, Kansas City and San Francisco, Detroit, all those tight ends. Those tight ends weren't drafted in the first round. You can find a tight end in the second round. You can find a tight end in the third round. I think this draft does have some good tight ends that are going to go on day two. I'm not so sure if you can find a tackle if you don't take one early on. And to me, I don't want to roll into this season with the options the Jets have at right tackle right now. I think they really need to address it with someone who can be a day one starter, and you're not taking a guess at.
Frankie has a point there. If you look at Inkstrand coming from the Detroit Lions, the quarterback's coach, who's their tight end, Sam Laporta, 17 touchdowns the last 2 seasons, including 10 as a rookie. He went in the second round. Is Kaz making sense here to where it's like you can't pass up on a tackle in the first round, but you could get someone at good value in terms of tight end in the later round?
Listen, he makes 100% sense, but there's two sides to this conversation because you can make the same point if you were to take, let's say, an offensive tackle in the first round. How do you know you're going to have a hit rate with the tight end in the second or third round? Now, I will say this draft is pretty deep at tight end. So you can look at guys even on day 3, like a Gunnar Helm, whom I like, people like Terrence Ferguson. You've heard Colston Loveland, who'll probably go at the end of the first round. Day 2 guys like Harold Fannin, the kids, obviously, Mason Taylor and Elijah Arroyo. But I'm telling everybody now, from my opinion, obviously, Tyler Warren's different. Tyler Warren's been classified as a super athlete. I think Tyler Warren's floor is extremely high, where we will get a tight end 1 that we can depend on for the next 3, 4, 5 years. The other tight ends in this class have high ceilings, but I think their floors are not there. They're like not established. They're lower floors. Tyler Warren's the only tight end in this draft I can look at and say, I can see this player being in the NFL 5 years from now and potentially being an all-pro level tight end. With that said, Kaz is correct. I am not banking on day 2 or day 3 to find the tackle, but I think the Jets' offensive line is good enough, and we actually are one of only 4 teams since 2020 to draft 3 first-round picks on offensive linemen. Mekhi Becton, Elijah Vera Tucker, and Olu Fashanu last year. So we've done our diligence, I think, and we've done enough with the offensive line, I think, where let's start getting help for guys like Garrett Wilson and putting a tight end that's viable next to him. We don't have one. We don't even have a wide receiver 2 that's going to really open things up. Now, I don't think there's a perfect answer here, and I'm fine with taking a tackle, but I think if we think a little bit differently, and Tyler Warren is different, I think that's the best move for us moving forward.
So, Kaz, if they grab a tackle in the first round, they shore up that offensive line. They got a stronger run game, and they protect Justin Fields. That's, hypothetically, what do they do about getting some sort of production on the perimeter or some sort of playmaker outside of Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, here's the trick, Brandon. The Jets have more than 2 or 3 needs right now, right? You can say tight end, you could say right tackle, you could say wide receiver, you could say defensive tackle. I'd even go safety in there too is probably a need. So they're not going to fill all of those needs in the first 2 rounds of the draft with 2 picks. This is another part of the tight end argument to me. There seems to be rumblings out there about some tight ends being available in the trade market. I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but Dallas Goedert's been talked about in Philadelphia. Mark Andrews in Baltimore has been talked about. Maybe that's a route the Jets go and make a trade and trade some, day 3 picks to get a tight end in here that you kind of know what you're getting. And it's not going to be a long-term solution. Those guys are older, but would help right away and kind of shore up that tight end position. And then you're using the draft picks, you draft a wide receiver as well that can come in and contribute. And you're hoping, you get some production out of those guys that are on the roster right now that are not named Garrett Wilson, and maybe somebody surprises you. But yeah, it's Brandon. It's going to be tricky. The Jets are not going to come out of this draft with everything filled. But the trade route to me is interesting at tight end because there seems to be some smoke around these guys. It's not just throwing things out against the wall here trades. It seems like something could happen with those guys during the draft or after the draft.
Frankie, I saw you shaking your head. Are you cool with that? If the Darren Muji decides to trade for a Dallas Goedert or some sort of proven tight end and then they pass up on Tyler Warren?
Yeah, I'm shaking my head because Kaz is 100% right. I've heard similar things, but if you look at how deep this tight end class is, you're going to have teams drafting tight ends, obviously. There's like 7 to 10 tight ends you can look at that could eventually be starters in this league. A team like Philly may take a Harold Fannin, may take a Colston Loveland, may take a Gunnar Helm and say, hey, let's ship out Dallas Goedert. I definitely see that happening, and I'm definitely in favor with the Jets trying to bring in an established tight end 1. And again, that goes back to my really original point with Tyler Warren. he's the one tight end in this class that I can assure you will be a starting tight end in the NFL. I think his ceiling is a little bit capped, whereas Colston, Loveland, and some of these other tight ends might have a higher ceiling, but I think he's got that high floor, similarly to how some of these tight ends would be that are available on the market. You have high floors with Dallas Goederts, etc. The Jets just need a starting tight end. We cannot go into the season with what we have. I'm sure we could all agree on that. So we'll see how it plays out.
All right, fellas, let's wrap this thing up. We're a week away from the NFL draft. Darren Muji has options at 7. Hopefully he selects the best option. And I'll see you guys draft night. Appreciate you hopping on.
Thanks, Brandon.
Salutes.